What's going on, folks? Welcome back to D-Life HD. This is Victor, and today we are going to be running over my first impressions with Monster Hunter Stories 2. I've had a little bit of time to play it since Friday when it launched, and I've got a couple thoughts that I'm going to share with you today. So without any further delay, let's jump right into it.
I was a worker, had to upgrade to a boss. Used to live in the hood, but had to upgrade to a low.
Alright, Monster Hunter Stories 2 Wings of Ruin. This is a game that I am extremely excited to cover on the channel. I've been looking forward to it since it got announced last September, so almost a year ago it got announced alongside Monster Hunter Rise. And I was excited for both, but they're very different kinds of games. They bear the same title, but the Stories games are completely different in the sense that they are more cartoony in their style. Hence the name, they add a lot more story elements in the progression. And also the combat is completely different. The objectives are different. It's turn-based, similar to something like Pokemon. It's more of a traditional JRPG, rather than Monster Hunter, which is more of like a hack and slash or even like American RPG. Now, I love turn-based games, but I have never been a fan of Pokemon, and it's similar in style because you're going out and you're collecting the monsters, just like you'd collect the Pokemon. And of course, there are different elements that set them apart, but it's clear that the team behind the first Stories game, which I did play, and Stories 2, were inspired by that sort of gameplay loop. And what they do here is you're actually searching monster dens. This is a crucial part to the gameplay where you're going through these randomly generated, basically mini dungeons, and finding eggs to hatch. And so there's sort of this RNG aspect of it that makes it really fun when you hatch these eggs that, well, what kind of monster am I going to get? And how good is it going to be? Because you can get two of the same kind of monster, but they could have completely different abilities, one being better than the other. And there's also an element called the Rite of Channeling that allows you to transfer certain functions of the monsters and certain abilities over to another monster. And that adds so much depth, it's insane, which means that even if you're picking up the same monster every single time you hatch an egg, it's still important because it might have certain genes or certain elements or attributes that you can transfer over to a monster that could use them. For example, I have Nargacuga, who is this sort of cat, wyvern type monster with wings. It's basically a dragon. But I transferred the ability to breathe fire from my Bracerios over to my Nargacuga. Nargacuga normally cannot breathe fire. Is not that kind of dragon. And so that makes it really interesting because that is not something you would see normally in the gameplay. Now, this element of the Rite of Channeling was in the first game, but I feel like the depth with all the different monsters that the Rite of Channeling can go to in Monster Hunter Stories 2 is far beyond the first game because of the amount of monsters you can get. And it's obvious that people are really going to get into the meta of the game and figure out what's the best build as far as monsters go. In addition, you do have the traditional weaponry and armor that the normal games offer. And this is one of the best parts of Monster Hunter, is going out, you're slaying monsters, and you're crafting armor and weapons based off of them to attack better monsters. And that element is still there in the person that you control. I really, really like making all these different armor sets, and that's completely here. It is a little bit limited in the weaponry because you're only able to have 6 weapons, whereas the normal game has 15, I believe, depending on the game. But it's important to rearrange your weaponry because they've added a new element in Stories 2, which I am very fond of, where certain parts of a monster are weak to certain weapons. Now, in normal Monster Hunter, you carry one weapon around. But in this game, there are 3 different types of weapons. You've got your standard weaponry, you've got your more blunt hammers, and then you've got your ranged weapons. So a ranged weapon might do better against a certain monster, or for example, like Korupeku, who has this giant beak. His beak is going to be weak to a blunt weapon because you can break the beak. So you want to use a blunt weapon because you're going to deal more damage and break off more parts, which you can use to craft armor. Now, in the normal game, you used to be able to function with only one weapon, and you could actually target only a few different monsters, like the bigger ones. But on this one, you can target like the head or the tail or the claws, which is an element of the normal game, where depending on what part you want to break, you're going to get different items or drops from the monster. So what they're doing is they're taking all these elements of the normal hack and slash style game and bringing them over to a turn-based style and really digging into what makes Monster Hunter great in a completely different way. And I really like that. It pays tribute to the fans that really like the normal games but are looking for a separate type of experience to play. And to be honest, it is a completely different kind of game. But I'm still invested in it because I like JRPGs a lot. I play quite a few of them. And honestly, playing a JRPG with Monster Hunter elements and a Monster Hunter story, all of these different creatures that I'm familiar with and know, it's awesome. Now, I haven't dug super far into the story yet, so I'm not really going to touch on that in this impressions video. I'm going to save that for the actual review, which hopefully will come in a couple weeks when I beat it. We'll see. I'm trying to push through it, but I don't want to rush too much. But the story is a crucial part of this game, like I said earlier. And I honestly am loving it so far. There are quite a few different just sort of mindless quests you have to go on to progress it that I think sort of detract from the experience. I feel like they should streamline it and then make all of those types of quests optional, so that way somebody like me that's trying to get through the story and will go back and do that later could do that. But there are so many required quests that you will have to go on to complete the story, and a lot of them are the same. It's, hey, this monster's doing this, go attack it. And so overall, I think the story's great. There's definitely a lot of filler to sort of round out the time that it's going to take you to get through it. From what I understand, though, there is a pretty substantial end game, and I'm really excited for it, especially considering the multiplayer function in this game. I've not had the chance to actually test it yet. I want to. I was going to test it with Marcus in the Discord, but you had to get to a certain point where you could use the multiplayer, and both of us weren't there, so we're holding off on that, but I'm going to test it. But you can actually arrange tournaments because there is PvP in this game, which is something that the main games don't have. And I remember doing that on the first stories with Connor in the Discord, and that was a lot of fun. And so I'm really excited to do more PvP, and you can do tournaments, which is super cool. I don't think that's something that was in the first game. I know you could enter into tournaments against CPUs, but you could literally like set up a tournament with your friends, and everybody would have their loadout, like something that they've really worked hard to build, like building this particular monster and all of its genes channeling towards it, and that is extremely exciting, and I cannot wait to test that out. But in addition, something that was not in the first game is the fact that we have co-op multiplayer, you know, something that's more in line with the mainline games. And so I haven't got a chance to try that, like I said, but I'm really excited to go on some quests with my friends. I think it's only 2-player, but it's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm really excited to test that function out, and I will definitely be mentioning it in my full review. So far, I'm loving the game. I cannot wait to see where it goes. I'm loving all the different biomes, seeing all the monsters I love in all these different areas, and it's just so far very exciting, and I cannot wait to continue playing it. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Let us know in the comments down below what you thought of this video. We love talking to you guys. Remember to like and subscribe for more videos like these. Lastly, check out our Twitter account for gameplay of the latest releases. But most importantly of all, remember to always stay 1-up.